Hello, my name is Jennifer Cognard-Black, and this spring I am the Robert Foster Cherry Professor for Great Teaching at Baylor University. This afternoon, I'm going to share with you a couple of pieces of short fiction, and both of these short stories have something to do with mothers and daughters. Now, many of you watching this today are, of course, the daughters of mothers, just as I am the mother of a daughter. This is a crucial relationship in many ways, in part because both a mother and her daughter have in common the fact that they are able to bear children, and in part because of a long-standing social belief in the Western world that mothers and daughters are society's caregivers, nurturers, healers, but also they're rebels, banshees, and witches. So mothers and daughters, they represent universal archetypes, as ancient as Naomi and Ruth, or Persephone and Demeter. And yet, their dynamic is so often absent or broken within the stories we tell each other and those that we also tell future generations. In Shakespeare's plays, for instance, there are numerous daughter characters, a few problematic, usually mother characters, but not a single powerful mother-daughter duo. In Jane Austen's novels, mothers are often bubbleheads who fail their daughters, unable to give them good counsel. And in the works of the Bronte sisters and Elizabeth Barrett Browning, orphaned daughters abound, feeling an intense mother-lack about the world. In fact, women writers in the Western world have felt the need to seek out literary mothers, often to replace their biological ones, such as Virginia Woolf in A Room of One's Own, or Alice Walker's book, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens. And then sometimes, the mother-daughter relationship is frankly poisonous, such as Setha's decision to kill her daughter Beloved to save her from being enslaved, followed by Beloved's haunting of her mother Setha in Toni Morrison's novel called Beloved. It's rather rare, really, to read or watch stories where mothers and daughters get along, although we do have Marmee March in Little Women, Ma in Little House on the Prairie, that Mamma Mia franchise, of course, and the ultimate reconciliation of a difficult mother-daughter dynamic in the recent film by Greta Gerwig, Lady Bird. So it might be that my interest in writing fiction about mothers and daughters stems from a real desire to portray the complications and the joys of this relationship, not to mention the ways in which many of us do, me as well, become our mother's daughters. So the first piece I'm going to share with you is hot off the presses. It's a piece that is coming out this month, April of 2021, in Story magazine. Now, before I begin, I should mention that I publish my fiction under a name other than Jennifer Cognard-Black. This is because Jennifer Cognard-Black is not the best name, right, on the cover of a novel or a collection of short stories. People hear Jennifer, they hear Black, and then they're like, what's that middle thing? Plus, Cognard has been Americanized to Cognard, and it looks like Cognard, which doesn't sound very good. But also, I publish my fiction under a pen name because it's my way of honoring my mother and my mother's family. So my pen name is J. Annie MacLeod, J for Jennifer, my first name, Anne for Annie, Annie for Anne, which is my middle name, but also my mother's name, and then MacLeod, which was my mother's birth name and is the name of my Scottish extended family. So that's why I publish my fiction under J. Annie MacLeod. Okay. So let us start with the first piece for this afternoon, which is in fact titled Daughter, Mother, Daughter, and it's by J. Annie MacLeod. Okay, here we go. Egg. The girl is conceived. Her atmosphere is viscous and close, as intimate as a tongue. As she grows, she eats the egg of her own making, raw and without choice. Her belly streaks fat, her haunches muscle. Her birth is a farmer's breakfast, egg, ham, and bacon, with a wide napkin to sop up the mess. Soy. Struggling to nurse, the girl's hunger feels prickly as a pear's. She cries a great deal and turns thin. After each feeding, she is sick, half filled with her mother's milk. The pediatrician suggests a soy-based formula, not cheap. It does the trick. Sucking her new bottles dry, the girl gains weight. Her mom moves the nursing bras to the back of the drawer. Hamburger helper. At age 4, the girl helps to make dinner. Be careful, says her mom, planting a stool under her daughter's feet and handing her a spatula. When Hamburger spits, it stings. The hot beef smells like pennies. As her mother boils macaroni and mixes a little envelope of dry orange dust with the water, the girl asks, "Why does the red turn brown?" Mom says, matter of fact, "The blood cooks up." The girl's eyes grow wide, then wider. What makes the meat bleed? A scraped knee? A cut finger? At dinner, despite her father's explanations about the food chain, the girl refuses to eat a single bite, throwing her fork across the room. The fork carves the air, landing with a clank. Her mom says, "And here I thought you were a big girl," sending her straight to bed with an empty stomach. Hot lunch. His name is Christopher. Watching with a bully's eye, the girl's carrot sticks and crustless cheese sandwiches provoke him as much as her Coke bottle glasses. Every day, Christopher circles her lunch table, making comments about the girl's face or voice or legs, spindly as asparagus. At night, before falling asleep, she imagines Christopher as a cow about to be butchered, how his eyes would roll back while a man with scarred fingers slit his throat. She can almost smell the hot gush of his blood. On Hamburger Friday, the circles of meat on the other kid's tray are Christopher's carcass, buried in pickle and bun. The girl almost goes through the lunch line to get one, then doesn't. French fries. The girl loves French fries with their warm skins and soft centers like skinny kids on a beach. To make sure they're crispy and hot, she orders them without salt, then secretly salts them with packets from her pocket. The girl has no idea that the fries are cooked in beef tallow, or that life is often a double-dealing thing. At 12, the girl gets her period, or I should say, red velvet cake. At 12, the girl gets her period, her underwear messy as a crime scene. Her mother insists on throwing a red party featuring cherry punch, raspberry chocolates, and a red velvet cake that takes 4 hours to make. All of her mom's friends show up with a red-wrapped gift, ready to tell a story about getting the curse. The women eat and laugh and drink wine the color of raw steak. As she listens, her eyes down, her cheeks raging, the girl knows that she will never, ever forgive this. Sugar cereal. In health class, the gym teacher, Mrs. Durst, shows her students a slide of the food pyramid. 6 servings of breads and cereals, she says, each and every day. But remember, sugar cereals don't count. They cannot count. Then Mrs. Durst points her finger at the class and says, "Sugar is white death." Most mornings, The girl craves Apple Jacks, willing to risk the grave for their candy store pinkness. Under the pyramid's meat, poultry, and fish category are drawings of cartoony chickens and kidney-shaped steaks, but the girl has seen their real colors off of her mother's cutting board, their white fat and crimson veins. Her cereal is the color of blushing cheeks. Apple cheeks, she likes to say, shaking the box over a bowl. Ramen. The girl's mother is from the Midwest, so she sneaks meat into anything she can. Soups, sauces, casseroles, even desserts. You need protein, she says. You're stunting your growth. The girl is a teenager, and so knows better. She has thumbed through nutrition books on how to make complete proteins with noodles or rice and beans. Do you know how many people die of E. coli poisoning each year? She asks her mom. Or trichinosis? Well, do you? Dinner becomes a mother-daughter slaughter. One weekend, the girl buys a garage sale hot pot and decides to cook in her bedroom. Boiling ramen for 2 minutes, then adding black beans and corn until heated through. That night, ignoring the hard knocks on her door, she eats her dinner slowly, her teenage body wrapped up tight like new corn. Chinese corn. Her first day at college, the girl goes to the club fair. She's drawn to the young Democrats, the scuba club, the feminists united for social equality. But then she sees a table for the vegucated society. It's the slogans that get her. No meat, no kidding. Eat like you give a damn. Meat is murder. She joins, and the girl starts calling herself a vegetarian, a word that feels definitive. With her new friends, she eats a lot of stir-fry. She can't get enough of those tiny ears of Chinese corn. They drink cheap beer and watch lurid documentaries on industrial agriculture. She buys a t-shirt that says, "Vegetarian, same life, only better," and begins each week tabling in front of the cafeteria, trying to convince her fellow students to vote for Meatless Mondays, the current campaign. The girl tells them, "You know, eating meat is like driving a Hummer to the grocery store." 99% of the time, the other students just roll their eyes and get in line, grabbing their hot dogs and hamburgers. Salt. The girl is ravenous for love. At the campus community garden where she spends time between classes, there's a boy she likes, all tussle-haired and anti-water bottle. But when he shows up one morning in a t-shirt that says, "Save a cow, eat a vegetarian," the girl thinks twice. Instead, she goes on a date with a fellow vegicate, a whip-thin boy named Sandro with a Sicilian smile who refuses to wear leather and whose hair brushes his shoulders like a curtain. When they have sex for the first time, it's painful, like a thing with claws. Afterward, her heart is salt, but she smiles at Sandro anyway. Slim Fast. Pigging out on cruelty-free Cheetos and Snickers bars, the girl gains more than the freshman 15. She loathes the pudding jiggle of her thighs, the muffin top puffing over her jeans. She turns to Slim Fast, chocolate and chalk, keeping the cans in her backpack, on her nightstand, in her car. Back home for Christmas vacation, she asks her mother to get some at the store, but Mom says, "Are you kidding? That's more sugar than a candy bar." The girl buys some on the sly. Sleek with the promise of thin, she hides the silver cans under her bed next to the old hot pot. For 2 years, she doesn't lose a pound, not until she trades her Slim Fast for cup after cup of strong black coffee. Carrot cake. As she's explained to her mother more than once, the girl and her fiancé Daniel don't want a traditional wedding cake. Look, Mom, refined sugar is white death, she says. Her mother's look is cool, more felt than seen. And don't you know the oppressive history of sugarcane farming, she asks, quoting a favorite professor. Instead of cake, the couple wants no-bake, vegan-friendly date squares. What the three of them finally settle on, though, is a carrot cake, one made with organic carrots and spelt, sweetened with local honey and thickened with Indonesian coconut. The ceremony is perfect. But when Daniel feeds her a bite of cake at the reception, the girl tastes a store-bought sweetness. She suspects her mother, but says nothing. Turkey. Their first Thanksgiving, the newlyweds must eat 2 meals, one with the girl's family, one with Daniel's grandmother. An old hippie, Grandma Posey, makes a meal that's oil to the soul. Rice and beans, olives and cheese, a side salad, and whole wheat bread, ending in a tofu pumpkin pie. Her table glows orange and yellow, and the talk spools easy as ribbons. Yet on the drive between this meal and the next, the girl's soul vinegars. She says, Mom will make turkey. She won't think it's Thanksgiving without one. Around her parents' table, bowls steam with mashed potatoes and beans. As the family waits for the main dish, talk is tight and clipped. Finally, Mom steps from the kitchen and sets down a platter with a glossy nut brown ball ringed by carrots. The girl shakes her head as if she's not hearing right. Tofurkey, says her mother, winking. Italian subs. At her new job copy editing for an eco-friendly magazine, the girl finds many like-minded co-workers. A vegan, a pescatarian, a clean eater. The girl notes that not a single takeout menu in the break room is for a vegetarian or vegan restaurant, although there are at least 2 such establishments around the corner from her building. It's all Italian subs and meat lovers pizza. Mushy peas. When the girl is in her early 30s, her mom has a sudden stroke. The meat of her mother's heart contracts, and her brain starts to rot. The only food the nurses can get her to eat are peas mashed with the back of a fork. The girl has never really liked peas, but when she visits the hospital, she squashes them for her mom. Their pop and smear surprisingly satisfying, like bursting bubble wrap. The only thing her mother says that's understandable is, "Thanks." The girl nods her head and says, "Sure." Casserole. When the call comes, the girl thinks, all that beef, and then regrets it. For the funeral, she will make a tribute casserole. The girl chooses pizza in a bowl, something she's never made, but it's a recipe her mother has marked easy. Browning the beef, the girl thinks of her mom's own muscle, tough as anger, red as love. Now her body is spoiling slowly, womb, gut, and brain zipped into the baggie of her own skin. The girl's arm stirs, her wrist flips. The kitchen smells of death. It's only now that she cries. Cannibalism. After the funeral, the girl puts her mom's ashes in the back of a closet. Then she plants a kitchen garden, tells Daniel it's time to get pregnant, and starts exercising at night after work. Wrapped in a reflective hoodie and wearing a runner's headlamp, the girl power walks through her neighborhood, peering into the small rectangles of light from other houses. One man nibbles his nails while watching TV. Another woman chops a tomato, popping a cut finger into her mouth. 2 children bite at each other, giggling. Household dust is mostly dead skin cells, she knows. All day long, just breathing, the girl consumes her husband as well as herself. like a baby eating its mother. Constant cannibalism. Steak. Though all the prenatal books say otherwise, the girl gets pregnant on the very first try. 6 weeks of mild morning sickness, nibbling crackers before climbing out of bed, and then she feels great. Her hair grows long and dense, her skin turns smooth as yogurt. And she finds she's happy as beanstalks in a breeze, peaches on a tree, a potato planted deep in good dirt. Food tastes like an advertisement of itself. At the start of her second trimester, Daniel takes her to a swanky restaurant. The next booth over, a thick-necked man orders a porterhouse. When the server slides it onto the table, glossy and red, the girl vibrates with want. Is this what her own mother felt? Barely listening to Daniel's talk about epidurals versus underwater births, the girl forks her pasta primavera and thinks about steak. For the next 6 months, she takes long lunch breaks and steals over to this restaurant alone. Sitting far from the windows, she works her way through the whole bloody menu: flatiron, flank, hanger, prime, T-bone, broil. As she chews, the baby kicks and flips and gets the hiccups as if it's laughing. At her 38-week checkup, her gynecologist, Dr. Rudd, glances at her chart and nods. No iron deficiency, he says. Glad to see you're being careful about that. With a sideways smile, the girl nods back. Kill floor. The girl chooses the epidural. After a hard birth as rank as the kill floor of an animal processing plant, the girl, now a mom, returns to vegetarianism. She considers telling Daniel about all that steak, then doesn't. Salami. Her daughter nurses with gusto. The mom's nipples become 2 raised sores, painful as burns. As her daughter grows, she is hale and happy, eating almost anything, even under-the-couch quarters and the fern's damp dirt. What her daughter hardly touches, though, are the fussy proteins the mom makes with a gourmand's care. Cottage cheese with garbanzo beans, carrot and lentil mush, pureed pumpkin from her own garden with garlic and barley, white as pearls. But it's a fistful of peanut butter or some greasy salami off a potluck plate that her daughter crams into her passionate mouth. Bacon. By age 12, it seems like what her daughter mostly eats is bacon. That summer, the daughter begs and begs for her parents to buy some, and finally her father relents. It's cruelty-free, he tells the mom, crazy expensive. But because the mom refuses to touch it, the daughter starts making it for herself, crackling the meat in the only pan that she's allowed to use. As her daughter fries the pork, her skin sizzles too, tan and electric, her body leaning over the rich, hot fat. She is beautiful, and the mom wonders if this is what she looked like as a teen, golden and taut. But the mom doesn't say any of this. Instead, she says, "This smell is killing me," fanning her nose like a Victorian in a too tight corset. Her daughter doesn't look up from the pan, says nothing. Afterwards, the mom airs out her kitchen, but the smell remains. Salad. Daniel turns 50, resisting decrepitude by training for a half marathon and eating lots of salad. An experimental cook, the mom pulls up whatever's in her garden and throws it together with whatever else is around. She tries a fava bean asparagus salad, a butter crunch and couscous salad, and even one she dubs the 3 Ps, a pomegranate, persimmon, and pistachio concoction. Daniel says she should go the way of celebrity chefs and publish a cookbook. You could call it Salad Days, he says, smiling at his own joke. But the mom has no interest. She doesn't use recipes, doesn't write anything down. Each dish is her transitory heart's desire. Her teenager avoids them all. When the mom asks if she wants some, her daughter laughs a hard laugh, shakes her head. The mom says, "You're starving your body. It's crying for vegetables." But her daughter just heats up a meaty microwave dinner and makes a snide comment about having to deal with a couple of middle-aged roommates. Cookies. While her daughter is away at college, the mom sends care packages instead of text messages. They're mostly silly, full of stickers and gum and bobbleheads, but she always includes a tin of fresh-baked cookies. Although she mails all kinds of cookies, zucchini molasses, applesauce peanut butter, oatmeal cranberry, her daughter only mentions the chocolate chip. When she comes home for fall break, she asks, "Hey, can I get that recipe, Mom, for the chocolate chip cookies?" The mom isn't sure of the exact ingredients or in what amounts, so she hunts down the Toll House version, a sure thing. But instead of printing it and sending it off in an email, she writes it out on an index card, her handwriting looping and old-fashioned. She titles it, "Mom's World-Famous Chocolate Chip Cookies." This makes her daughter laugh, but in a good way. Pizza. One weekend, the mom goes on a spur-of-the-moment road trip to visit her daughter, now living in her first apartment after landing a decent job. Answering the door, her daughter's eyes show surprise, but all she says is, "Hey, Mom, I'm making dinner, come on in." Dinner is a pepperoni pizza. "But I'm using pesto for the sauce," her daughter says. "Made it myself." Now it's the mom who's surprised. The kitchen is chaotic. Crusty dishes in the sink, green slime in the Cuisinart, cans and bottles all over the counter. The mom could roll up her sleeves and start cleaning, but doesn't. When her daughter pulls the pizza from the oven, she says, "You don't have to eat it if you don't want to." But the mom is a mom, and so knows better. Picking up a slice, she takes one bite and then another, filling her mouth. "It's good," she says, winking. And it is. Ash. Digging for an old pair of boots in the back of the closet, the mom finds her own mother's box. "All this time," she says. Picking it up, she decides to take it out to the garden, its weight surprisingly light. It's an early spring day, sweetheart weather. Standing over her newly planted peas, the mom reaches into the box, scattering some of the ashes, then grasping the dust in her hand. She brings it to her face, sniffing it, then putting the tip of her tongue to its powdery grayness. The exact look of her mother's face is vague, as is the precise twist of her wrist, the particular bend of her knees. Tipping the handful of dust into her mouth, she dry swallows it before showering the rest over everything else. Bugs and roots will feed on the ash and salt, she knows. Maybe they'll taste a life beyond this life. Maybe that's the dirt beneath her own tongue. Okay, so that's Daughter, Mother, Daughter. And again, that's the piece that is coming out this very month in Story Magazine. The other piece I'm going to read for you, I'm not going to read the whole of. It's, as I mentioned before, my only published piece of fantasy fiction, though I am a fantasy fiction fan. And it came out in the Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. And it's about a girl who turns into a wolf. Now, because I don't want to impose upon your time too much, I'm not going to read the whole of this, but I think the cuts make sense, so hopefully you'll be able to follow along. This one's called Gasoline, also by J. Annie MacLeod. The first time Viola changed Joe into a wolf was the second time Joe got to see the big city. Big for Joe, at least. She'd grown up in Hay Springs out near the Sandhills, a town Mom said 693 souls strong last July with the birth of Marie's baby sister, just 2 hours shy of Independence Day. Bone-barren cold in the winter, Hay Springs was so humid come summer that most women cooked supper in their underwear, in plain view of anyone who happened to cut home across people's backyards. Joe knew, and didn't want to know, that Mrs. Worst wore hip-hugger briefs with tiny jumping frogs that shook and leapt to the buzz of her electric mixer. The only true bikinis in Hay Springs were hand-me-downs from big city cousins. Like this May, with a candy-red bikini Joe'd gotten in the mail from Cousin Jeanette. Ever since, Joe had wanted to run away to Omaha. Omaha, where Jeanette had lived with Aunt Celia and Uncle Howard since she was 3. As far as Joe was concerned, Jeanette had it all. A movie theater with 6 screens, a football field with permanent bleachers, a mall with real stores like the Limited and the Gap. No Caroline's Fashions for young and old, where Joe's mom got her Levi's and Fruit of the Loom t-shirts. And boys. Jeanette knew boys who bought their own cigarettes and drove their own cars and didn't think swiping a 1/6 of their dad's Jim Beam meant they were cool. All summer, Joe wore Jeanette's cherry-colored bikini top, cut off short slung low enough to let a little bit of the red bottom show. Stopping by Minute Mart for ice cream, biking to and from Marie's house, lying out on the cracked pavement of the only public pool for 3 counties. No matter what she did, in Jeanette's bikini, Joe thought she could smell the city, metal, grease, the low burn of exhaust fumes like incense from the other side of the world. So when Viola took Joe to the field just outside Omaha, Joe thought more about Jeanette and the city, and less about what it was actually going to be like, becoming a wolf. Viola had made Joe drive like she made her do everything else. 8 long hours, Joe had kept hands on the wheel, both hands on the wheel, exactly 2 and 10 o'clock. Just like Dad told her when they'd practiced on the Honda, brake and gas with the right foot, clutch with the left. The car was heavy, a big Ford truck. It didn't shift smooth like Joe was used to, that close Japanese handling, and the pedals were a million miles away. The truck was old, too, old like Viola herself, and the seats smelled of stale fries and spilled Coke, a high school gym. Joe had figured Viola's truck would smell more like her whole house, like witchcraft. Mint, basil, and wax. But Joe was getting used to being surprised by Viola Tisserand. Joe sneezed often. They said her allergies were psychosomatic, a nervous tic. Wiping her nose on the back of one hand, she hoped Viola wouldn't give her the 3rd degree for being gross, unladylike. "I've had really bad allergies my whole life," she said to Viola. Short and shrill, Joe's voice had a nasal quality like her sneeze. She hated it. It made her sound childish, whiny. "I'm on all kinds of medication for it. The pills dry me up pretty good, but I can't taste anything. Candy bars, hamburgers, bananas, all of it's sort of like mashed potatoes." Viola kept her hands in her lap, one thumb pushing the wrinkles of the other, a plow making furrows. She seemed to be watching the dirt billowing up from the side road, dry and hot. Thank God, Viola had air conditioning. Most old women who Joe knew from church practically lived in sod houses and drove Model Ts. No convenience. Convenience was a sin, especially in Hay Spring, where microwaves were still suspected of being UFO technology. "So I stopped taking the stuff whenever I can sneak a pill into the toilet behind Mom's back," she said. But then my nose runs, and if my mom finds out, she gets pretty ticked. All that money down the drain and everything." The setting sun shone hard in Joe's side mirror, a crystal flash that blinded her for a second, making her think for the first time all day why they were really there. White magic. Transformation. For a second her stomach hurt, a sharp tug stronger than the new cramps that she'd had for 3 days now. Taking a bend to the right, Jo turned too fast, and her heart went with it. The truck fishtailed. Calm down, she thought. We're not in that big of a hurry. She told herself to breathe deep through her mouth. You want to keep your body free from man-made materials for this kind of work, said Viola, her face still turned to the road. Here we go. Viola had been schooling her in witchcraft for 3 weeks, and Jo was almost used to the old woman's harangues on health and diet and proper behavior. If your nose bothers you, Miss Joanna, you try a capsule of cayenne twice a day. Try it with strong tea. Bourbon's better, of course, but you're too young to start all that. And stop eating French fries. They clog the heart and cloud the mind. Surely your mother doesn't let you eat that junk. You eat French fries, Jo said. I just saw you eat a whole box, a supersize. Well, I can. I'm past all of that now. My heart and mind can be as slow and thick as I want them to be. As the truck crested a hill, Jo thought she could make out long shadows from the circle of pines some 2 miles off, but she didn't look long or close, too careful about the 3-second rule. If you have to look at something other than the road, Dad had said, you put those eyes back in 3 seconds, no more. Jo hardly ever came out to the country because of her allergies. Pollen City. The clumps of crab trees and maples and birch at the edge of each field looked tired, bent into each other like worn-out athletes. An unusually hot August this year, everyone was saying. A bad August for breathing. Again that drag in her stomach and along her legs, a new deep space and pain she wasn't used to. It embarrassed her, this period thing. It had come late, after all her other friends. Shifting in the seat, straightening her back to try and ease the new pain, Jo asked, Are we getting close? Her voice was even tighter than usual. Don't you be jumping the gun. Viola turned to face Jo, and Jo's cheeks got hot the way they always did when adults paid her special attention, picked her out of a crowd. I told you, 3 days after the first blood, full stomach, sunset on the eve of a new moon, and a mind as clear as running water. You've got to focus all of your energy to do this. You get sloppy, you get distracted and start your wool gathering, and you know what happens. I could die. I know. You told me. Jo didn't believe it. How could she? She'd seen a good deal of Viola's shape-changing magic in 3 weeks. A squirrel into a prairie dog, a blue jay into a crow, and the riskiest one 3 days ago, a dog into a wolf. But death hadn't been a part of all that. Not once. Just the words and then some blood. A sharp squeal of pain, and that moment when one thing was between 2 things. The second when the air crackled, electric and blue. I remember, Jo said anyway. You don't have to think I don't remember the risks. I was only asking if we were close or not. It's no big deal. It was amazing how much she had learned from Viola in just 3 weeks. Before, Jo had known her as the crazy woman down the street, the hag, the old bitch everyone talked about like talking weather. Then 3 weeks ago, Viola had grabbed her elbow while Jo was minding her own business, walking to Minute Mart to meet her best friend Marie for ice cream and a Coke. Viola had asked her to help with the ladder. I have to get those leaves out of my drain pipe before fall. And Jo had got the same prickly feeling she always had around people she thought of as touchers. Touchers. People who felt things to know them. Viola had wrapped her hand around Jo's elbow, and Jo had felt that sting, that search like a doctor's swab down your throat, and then a tug on her arm that said, She'll suit just fine. At that moment, Jo's cheeks had burned so hot, she thought that they were going to melt right off. Now Viola twitched her skirt, ran her thumb and forefinger along a pleat. Jo liked the way the polyester flowers whispered and shook beneath Viola's fingers, as if blowing with a breeze. Viola tidied herself like she tidied everything else, flicking an eyelash off Jo's cheek, arranging candles by smell and color, wiping the blood Jo had left on Viola's toilet seat after figuring out her first tampon. It was her nature, Jo understood, putting things in their proper place. Are you old enough to be dating yet? Viola asked. Are you in love with some boy? I'm only 14. Jo rubbed the back of her hand against her nose, blocking her cheek from Viola's sight. What difference does that make? They sell sex to babies. Viola expected an answer. Her questions and answers were part of the method, trying to catch Jo in a lie, see if Jo was really worth her while. Mike Sprague kissed me after a football game once last fall, Jo said. He was going with Tiffany Mullison, and he even told me so before he kissed me. But I didn't care. She liked the sound of that "I didn't care." It made her think of leather girls, 16-year-old girls in the city like Jeanette, with bright lipstick and short tops that showed off their stomachs. His kiss was kind of gross anyway, like being swallowed. But Jo remembered that night. Cold, so cold for October. The north wind hard, a physical thing, a shove against her face and chest. Mike had wrapped his jacket around her. It smelled of stolen smokes and gasoline. When he slid his hands under her sweater and swallowed her mouth, she had touched his hairless face, polished smooth and firm by so much cold, a frozen cue ball. Jo remembered the ache the next day, her lips puffy and sore to the touch. She had touched them often. That's the circle, said Viola. Now close, the ring of pines blotted out a small corner of the great Nebraska sky. Pull off here. And I'm going to skip a little bit, and we're going to go to the end of this story. And so it began. 1,000 red rays shone through the pine needles as they walked toward the circle, and Jo wondered what it'd be like if they pierced her, riddled her body with holes of light. These trees were the one upright thing for miles and miles, and the land seemed to gather its folds and furrows into the circle, stretching itself as if to come together at this single point. Inside, the light changed, grew dense. With just her fingertips touching the rough bark of a tree, Jo felt this place, tried to figure it out. Now warm and damp, Jo imagined this circle in winter. The silent field, the pines heavy with snow, scattered on the wind like ash, the clean cold. She saw herself running, lungs hard with the scrubbed cold air, a trickle of sweat beneath her jacket and sweater, wet between her growing breasts. Removing plastic baggies from her purse, Viola got everything ready. Loose herbs, candles, a box of kitchen matches. What do you hear? She asked Jo. I don't know, the wind, I guess. But then Jo thought about her ears, shaped to catch sound. The wind and pine needles rubbing against each other. And Viola lit 3 candles with 1 match. Small and neat, she sprinkled herbs around the candles as if seasoning a soup. Jo closed her eyes, listening. And a train, a long ways away. A car, maybe a truck, probably a truck. It sounds big. Lots of tires. A bird calling from somewhere pretty close. Good, said Viola. Now cast the circle like I taught you. Keep your chin up. Jo fixed her gaze far away, through the pines to the flat horizon. She took off her clothes, shoes and socks first, folding her jeans and shirt on top. She tucked her underwear and bra between them, hidden. The wind hot caught her hair, strands in her mouth and across her eyes. Jo kept her hair long, even though it got in the way, stuck in car doors and tangled in the straps of her backpack. It was like having 1,000 tiny fingertips. Now they felt the wind, tapped her bare back and shoulders. She'd never been outside and naked. Jo could sense Viola deep against the trees, her shape just a trace in the shadows, a pencil sketch waiting for color. Maybe a reminder or something she could not help, Viola murmured the words along with Jo. But Jo's voice above hers was higher, fuller. the nasal whine fading with the rising wind. When the circle was cast, Viola asked, "What do you see?" Jo kept her eyes shut. A yard full of flowers, a clothesline. There's one sheet left to take in, white. The wind's come up, and it's snapping pretty hard. A pile of stones, I think, some kind of a wall. An old plastic pool, the ones little kids use in summer. But Jo saw more. Holes of light through pines, sunset like fire, long brown stalks, brittle and rotting, the purple vapor of night. "Are you scared?" asked Viola. "Do you think you're set?" Her voice was rapid, machine gunning the words. "Yes." Shivering first inside then out, Jo's skin prickled cold, even in the heat, her nipples hard, a pull in her stomach as if someone was yanking a string. "Now, what do you smell?" asked Viola. At first, nothing. She crouched closer to the ground, needles pricking her palms. Her nose, she thought, her useless nose. Only pine and dirt, faint. She imagined her nose like a radiator grill, close to the land and moving fast, and she caught a sweet smell with a metallic bite, sticky and sharp, a smell that widened and grew heavy. Her own body. She tilted back her head, wind like water over her face. A smell of rot, sweet like her own skin, but with a foulness she could not name. That last smell was night. "Now think. What do you feel?" Jo felt every inch, every nerve, each hair, head, arms, back, legs vibrated like little heartbeats. Jo felt the sun slip under the horizon line, the fierce hot heat of day now, a low heat coming off the earth, yeasty and expandable like new bread, the heavy ache of smooth new breasts pulled toward the earth. She felt that closer heat as her own pain, the delicious drag of contracting muscles deep inside. Then another wave hit Jo from the deep pit of her stomach, then wave upon wave. The air smelled like singed hair. As if from a long distance, like the click and delay of an overseas phone call, now Jo heard Viola's voice ask what she could taste. But now the language wasn't English. Instead, the sound barked at her, clipped edges and vowels from the front of the mouth, just behind the teeth. Jo realized Viola wasn't from Nebraska. Her sound all east, Boston or New York. Tasting salt, a sting in her mouth, Jo moved to the edge of the trees. She was still alive, after all. The magic and the plains and the vast purple sky held Jo, no longer a girl, held her to the land as she left the circle of pines, her limbs lithe and fast, her body parallel to the ground. Jo, no longer a girl, saw herself run so fast that the world fell away, and whatever she thought happened. At first, she wasn't sure where to go. The whole earth rang for Jo, no longer a girl but a wolf, corn and wind and night sky ringing with sharp sounds like blades meeting. Jo followed these sounds along an old creek bed to a farmhouse. Here, the neat yard, the clothesline, the snap-snap of a sheet, bullets in the breeze. Here, the rock wall and plastic pool, gaps in the rock where animals hid or lived, fat and small and pink. A line from a song she didn't recognize. Jo thought sometimes lovers begin this way too, although her thoughts were smells and sights and sounds, tender plants ready to be broken, the stink of fallow earth against the house needing to be hoed, small footprints in the lawn like a promise, a lazy circle from afternoon, a child playing. Viola laughed. From a distance of half a mile, it sounded like a raveled sleeve, a pull and thread of laughter. "The land," she yelled at Jo. "The land and the sky, the trees and the corn, the moon and the stars, all yours." She laughed again. Take it all." Jo understood Viola's hunger then, knew what it meant to want and to lose, and occasionally to have. With Viola so far away, her long black silhouette like the leg of a fox, Jo thought how much she loved her, would always love her, for sharing the magic. But this field, the good mud, the sky a black vault, the groundhogs and rabbits and squirrels, the promise of a child, the ring of pines, this was Viola's way. Joe left the farmhouse, whipping and spinning through the dead summer corn, rustling stalks like whispers. Knowing now that secrets couldn't harm her, that Viola didn't know and didn't need to know everything, Joe made plans. She knew that later she would flee from farmers, chase rabbits, maybe steal a child. But tonight, Joe needed something else. Even in Hay Springs, it wasn't the thing for teenagers to race along dry riverbeds or dig soil sharp with the stench of old tomato plants. The field could have too many leg traps, too many farmers with ready rifles. Joe wanted the city. She wanted what Jeanette had. She wanted Omaha. To run low and fast, lights and glass and asphalt melting past, a harsh blur. She wanted to run early in the morning, very early, the time when another wolf could be smelled 2 miles off, his smell so different from hers, not sweet or metallic, but like meat, like gasoline. She howled. Her howl was long and deep and not for fun. Joe howled and then turned toward the city. Okay, so that's where we'll leave Joe. And I should mention, now that I'm looking for a piece of paper here, those of you who have had me this semester know that I do everything in hard copy. So hence I've been reading off of paper. I should have mentioned that in the story having to do with Joe and Viola, that Viola, of course, is not a biological mother, right? She is a mother figure. She is a mentor and a nurturer of a very different kind. Okay, 3 questions for you, those of you doing CAE, and they are as follows. Question 1. Gasoline is a fantasy story in which a young girl is transformed into a wolf. Within the bounds of this story, the transformation is meant to be literal, but it's also symbolic. What do you believe Joe's transformation might be symbolic of? Provide detail from the story in your answer. Number 2. Daughter, Mother, Daughter is structured as a series of subtitled paragraphs where each moment from the 2 main characters' lives are labeled. Each of these labels has to do with food. Why and how is food an important theme in this story? Again, provide detail from the story in your answer. Number 3. Both Gasoline and Daughter, Mother, Daughter are centrally about what it means to grow up as a young girl in America, even though one story is a piece of fantasy and another is realistic. What similarities do these 2 stories have about the theme of female adolescence? And why do you suppose the writer represented young girls in these ways? Well, it has been just a pleasure to spend a little time with you this afternoon, and I wish you the very best as you finish out your spring semester here at Baylor. Thanks so much.